It's Bronze and Modern Gods. I'm John, and we're not dead from Hillary yet.
Yeah, I'm worried about you guys out there going to get waterlogged.
Hi, Richard. Hi, everyone. Through the magic of the interwebs, we actually haven't been hit by Hurricane Hillary yet here. As we're recording this, hopefully I'll get it edited and uploaded in time before we lose power for a week. Who knows what's going to happen?
Oh,
I know.
bright side, bright side.
Right side.
Your lawn will be watered.
Yes, it'd be gorgeous, the lawn. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Bronze and Modern Gods. If you're not, please do so. And hit like, hit subscribe. It helps us out with everyone. Welcome, everyone. A reminder, Richard, this guy right here next to me, and I will be at Baltimore Comic Con coming up soon, September 8th, 9th, and 10th. And we will be live streaming from the Wacom booth. Wacom, as you guys know, have been gracious enough to sponsor this show, and you can show your support for Bronze and Modern Gods by downloading and testing and trying the Wacom app today. Trying it's free, right, Richard?
Yep, it's free and easy to download. You can follow me at ChronoSafe. My daughter is starting to use Wacom to keep track of her manga collection and find new books to read. So it's an amazing resource for people who are into manga.
And I'm on there at John_Hughes, just like the director. Lots of you following us. We see you. We're seeing your collections. We're seeing your want list. You can add whatever data you like when you add your collection in. You can put your grade if it's a CGC slab, page quality. It's kind of like a social network for comic book readers. You can keep track of what you've read, what you have, what you want. It's great. It's free. It's Wacom, Whakoom. It's on the Google Play Store and the Apple App Store. And we will see you at the Wacom booth at Baltimore Comic Con. Richard, Hot Book of the Week. You would think you picked this, but I actually picked it.
You would think this is like right in my alley. Uncanny X-Men number 109, 1978. This is an awesome book. Chris Claremont as writer, John Byrne as artist. Beautiful, beautiful artwork. First appearance of Weapon Alpha, who will later be known as Vindicator.
I don't know why this book is spiking this week, but it is. Lots of sales volume on this. The 90-day average for CGC graded 9.8 is $2,038. That's down from its all-time high of $3,101 in the great comic boom of 2021. Just a great classic John Byrne costume design. Okay, people like Vindicator, right?
Yeah.
Why? He was killed off in Alpha Flight 12. He hasn't been around for decades.
I know, and his wife took over after he was killed off. I have to say, you're right. Great costume. John Byrne did an excellent job for Alpha Flight for costumes. Yeah, I don't.
Well, let me get in there real quick. Huh? I do think he owes a little bit to George Freeman and Captain Canuck, which was first.
Mm-hmm.
But go on. Sorry.
Yeah. No. Aurora and North Star, they had great costumes. I think they complemented each other. I think he did a good job on the costumes. But yeah, you're right though. It's Vindicator starts off strong, and he's the alpha male of Alpha Flight, and then kind of goes away. And team dynamic changes a bit. But yeah, this is I love this book. I love all of these. Everyone knows Byrne Claremont books, I think are the pinnacle of the X-Men saga. But I've been saying buy this book for years. I've been buying copies of it whenever I was able to find them, and they're starting to go up in value. I mean, I used to be able to buy them for $50. Now it's more around $200 for one of these books as a raw. So if you do come across one, a lot of people will come across them. They'll buy a set or a collection of X-Men books. If you do come across one, hold on to it. In my opinion, I think because it's Weapon X, Weapon Alpha, and Weapon X, and Weapon X is Wolverine, and it's Wolverine versus Weapon Alpha. I think it's going to continue to hold value, and as Wolverine becomes an important part of the MCU, which he's going to be, and it's harder. I can't think of an easier bet than to see Wolverine as a significant part of the MCU. I think all of his key books, which is this is one of them, are going to be really good.
I did see that there was a new Alpha Flight series coming from Marvel.
Yeah.
And it's the original team. I was like shocked to look at the lineup. It's not like, we're going to reboot this for, the 90s or whatever.
Oh yeah, all new young people in it.
Yeah. So I actually think I might even pick it up. I wonder if it's worth picking up. Speaking of sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to ask, is Puck on there?
I thought Puck was on there. Here's a shot of the cover. So you tell me. Speaking of picking stuff up, when I was down in Mexico City about a month and a half ago, or has it been 2 months now? I happened to pick this up.
Oh, you lucky dog. Yeah, perfect timing.
It is the Mexican reprint of X-Men 109. I would say it's probably a 9.0, 9.2 after a press. Yeah. So talk about a lucky pickup, $3.50.
Yeah, you unfortunately have that access. I shouldn't say unfortunately, because you get me goodies sometimes too. To the Mexican market directly from the tap. So yeah. That's awesome to make those.
I've got the best tour guide ever that happens to live here in my house. What can I say? Okay, time for our show and tell feature. Well, half show and tell. Richard, tell everyone why you don't have any show and tell books this week.
I had just had a rather large plumbing bill come, a 5-figure plumbing bill come, and that kind of drained all of my fun resources. So my comic book purchases are going to be pretty light here for the foreseeable future.
Going to sell that FF number 5 to pay for the plumbing?
Nope. There's like 5 core books that I will be cuddling in my coffin. And that is going to be one of them.
All right. Well, I have some show and tell here. Maybe Hurricane Hillary will make me sell some of these after after it hits. I got this from my LCS, and that would be Ryan at Pulp Fiction here in Long Beach, California. And it's really nice. It's X-Men number 6.
Oh,
look at that.
Excellent.
With Submariner, when I guess they say he's a mutant now because he has wings on his feet, unlike other Atlanteans. He's got the red trunks instead of the green trunks. Still very early Silver Age Namor. And I'd say I pressed this. It looks good. I'd say it's like a good 7.5 maybe. So I'm going to send this in and see what she comes back at.
Yep.
Are you working on an X-Men run like that early?
Not that my X-Men run starts at 94 and goes all the way through 300. I decided was the cutoff point. But yeah, I would love to kind of fill back up to the early issues.
They're kind of like Apple stock, they're never going to go down. They're always going to be there, nice and solid. Right. You guys know I'm a huge Jack Kirby fan. One of the more interesting eras of Kirby was in the 50s when he and Joan Simon tried to start their own comic book company called Mainline. They had titles like, I believe, Fighting American, Bullseye, things like that. They did Westerns, they did superheroes, and they did romance because they invented the romance comic book genre in the 40s. So they knew how to do it well. And I was on eBay and I saw a lot of these two books together. They are In Love number 4 and 5. Here's number 4. It's not a Kirby cover, but you can see here, Simon and Kirby smash hit.
Nice.
Very unusual back then for creators to get credit like that. And here's number 4. This is the last issue under their company, Mainline. They went under, and like Foxhole, you guys know my Foxholes are from Mainline. They sold all the remaining inventory to Charlton. So Charlton put out issue 5 of In Love. This one does have a Kirby cover. And apparently In Love number 5 is a really, really scarce book. And it does have a big, huge chunk out of the cover down here, but I've never seen a copy. Number 4 is a mess. It's got a spine split, but 5 had, I wish I had taken it. I'm so mad at myself. It had a gnarly spine roll that I fixed. You can't even tell now. It looks good. and I wish I had taken before pictures. I get in the zone and I
Yeah,
forget
sure.
document it for you guys, and I always say I'm going to do it on Instagram. So yell at me for not documenting my spine roll fixes. I'll start doing that. I swear. I promise you guys. Both 4 and 5 were listed for $100. I offered 70, and the guy took it.
Excellent.
So there you go. And I have one more show and tell book for this week. This came back from CGC when we did our drop offs together at San Diego Comic Con. Mine got back super quick. Yours just got put into grading this week.
This week, yes. And they're the reholders, so and including a magazine reholder, which means it could be sometime around Christmas before I hear about it.
I don't know why it took so long for them to put your reholders in. Mine were full non-fast track modern and vintage, and I got everything back already. This came back. It is Champions number 7, 30-cent variant.
Nice.
That I found in a dollar bin. So
oh wow.
came back a 7.5 off-white to white pager. So really happy with that. Hercules. That's why. So there's show and tell for this week. Moving on to viewer mail.
You've got mail.
Richard, you start off.
Okay. My viewer mail, first piece of viewer mail is from YouTuber Brightology, who originally sent us a message a few weeks ago about racism in comics. And we kind of discussed that topic last show and gave my opinions on it and just the state of collecting comics that have a racist theme. Thanks for being authentic and not afraid to discuss racist tropes from the past. He had mentioned that he had been debating with someone about whether or not comics were racist or not from the Golden Age. The guy who I was debating with said many of those characters, like Little 8-Ball, were lovingly created. Maddening. Yeah, they could be lovingly created. That's true, but that doesn't change the fact that it's still a racist trope. Whatever happens to be, Big Lips, Watermelon. There's a variety of minstrel, and that's just African Americans. Racism in the comics followed, whatever race and ethnic group, and that's a part of that history. And as I've talked about before, you can accept that was a part of history without condoning it, and that's kind of my attitude towards it. And no, we want to shy away from. I try not to get too deep and heavy in this show because it's a fun show and we talk about things. But as I mentioned before, we also talk about our own experiences as a part of the comic book collecting world, and this is a part of it. And I think it definitely needs to be raised and people starting discussion about it.
Yeah, would Matt Baker have drawn Little 8-Ball? I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, I think he would have drawn the line somewhere along, not so much about race, but about very coded sexuality. Someone, I can't remember who it was. My apologies. Brought up Wilson Fisk's son, the Rose, Spider-Man villain, who was or was it Roderick Kingsley? One of them that Roger Stern created that was like super fey and girly and like does this offend you? And I thought, not really. It's kind of like being offended by Paul Lynde, or Charles Manson. Guess what? Some fey guys exist. I like am I wrong for kind of liking the fact that he was a villain? I mean, I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I remember in the Comics Journal, some people were really, really on fire about Roderick Kingsley being, a stereotype. And, of course, he was into fashion and flowers and stuff like that. But he was evil. It was kind of cool. I don't know. Am I wrong? I don't know.
Being, redefining what is the boundaries of evil.
Yeah,
I think that's great.
Somebody needs to revive him. If he's not around, that would be cool for someone to do a take on him now. My first piece of viewer mail comes from our email at bronzeandmoderngods@gmail.com from Warren Duplessis. Warren, if I slaughtered your name, I apologize. Greetings, John and Richard. I watch your show every week as I believe you two are the most knowledgeable hosts on YouTube as far as comics are concerned. I really love the show. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Now for my question. Which bag is better for storing comics, polypropylene or polyethylene? When I first started collecting way back when I was 13, I used the polypropylene as they were cheap and did the job. Then later on, I purchased a comic that came in a polyethylene bag, and I quickly noticed the difference. I've been buying polyethylene ever since, as I feel they are just better quality. Please let me know your thoughts on this. Thanks, Warren. I think it's the other way around. Isn't polypropylene the nice ones that are clear?
I honestly don't remember which one is which.
Let me go do some research right now. Booyah! Kind of cool how I did that, huh? Yeah, polypropylene, super clear polypropylene, acid free, no PVC, archival safe. So yeah, I think you got it backwards there, Warren. Polyethylene was the one that I used to use when, back in the 80s. It was super cloudy. After a couple of years, it would get cloudy and gross.
Yeah, when I pulled my collection out of the attic from being up there for 30 years, the bags were very cloudy because the plastic over time degrades. I also have to mention, regardless of what you use, you are going to need to change out the bags in your collection. If you keep your collection more than 5 years, it's time to rebag it. It's a terrible thing for those people who have 40, 50 boxes of comics. But yeah, you want to rebag.
Well, you stagger it out. You don't do them all at once.
That's a good point.
Yeah. If you change 3 boxes and then, you wait a month and you do 3 more boxes. That way you're staggering stuff.
Yeah. That helps the longevity of your comics, because as those bags degrade, the different chemicals are released, and it's just better to remove those used bags over time.
Yeah. All right, Richard, what is your next piece of viewer mail?
My next piece of viewer mail is also from YouTube. It's from Lee Iron 3706. It's about Archie Comics. Archie Comics has gone even deeper into pop culture than one might realize. The CW network for the past 4 or 5 years has had an offbeat show called Riverdale. It took me a while. It took me into the second or third season before I realized what it really was basically an Archie Comics on the little screen. I don't think I ever saw it more than a couple minutes of the show, but my mother sure did enjoy it. I say that in the past tense because in the past year was the last season. I'm not sure how close it resembled the comics aside from the name of the characters, but here too, they try to be relevant. Yeah, that's that you bring up a very, very good point. This is a vector for people who are not comic book collectors to find an interest in comic books. The Riverdale show was loosely based on the characters from the comic book. They sexualized and teenageized them to the point that and I shouldn't say teenage eyes. I should say CW eyes, because a lot of CW characters are kind of the same, cut from the same cloth. I also did not watch the show religiously. I think I watched the first episode, and then here and there I would watch some of it. It got a little too drama-y, too much like a soap opera for me. But I could see the appeal. If you like the show, there may be some comic books, some of the Archie comics, like Archie Afterlife, which is a more darker feel to the storytelling, that you might find appealing. So from that aspect, I love the show, because, anytime you have visibility in the mainstream to comics, it promotes comics in general, and you get new people who come into the hobby, and that's always a good thing.
Lee, I don't think it was a secret that Riverdale was based on Archie Comics. They were pretty vocal about it, and they actually had a couple of they had some influence on the actual Archie Comics. You had Life with Archie, where he, it was an alternate reality where he gets married, and it was a much more dramatic approach. And I always heard it described as David Lynch goes to Riverdale.
Oh, really? I never heard that, but that's kind of...
if it was a little more Twin Peaks-ish, I'd be in there, man. I do know that they had Jughead wearing that stupid hat the first season. Some
Yeah.
shots. My next piece of viewer mail comes from our good friend Julius Maloney, a longtime viewer. Oi, what's with the Don Heck diss? I mentioned about Don Heck. I have such a soft spot for Heck, as he did a lot of Wonder Woman in the 80s, and those were some of my first Wonder Woman comics I bought myself back in the day. I've read that he was one of Kirby's better inkers, question mark. Give Heck his flowers. Thanks for writing, Julius. No. I'm kidding. Don Heck is complex. Uh, and I say that because you look at his 1950s art, you look at the early Iron Man stuff, and he could draw women like no one's business. Beautiful women. His romance stuff was really, really good. Inking on Kirby, he was a little too scratchy for me. Even doing his own inks, very scratchy, very. You could tell it was Don Heck inks, and I think in the 70s, Bronze Age, he got really sloppy. He got lazy, did shortcuts. Now, is that a bad thing? No, because he was getting a page rate. He had to make money. It was in those days where, he wasn't able to sell his original art and become a name, so he had to hack stuff out in order to put food on the table. So, do I hold an artist like Don Heck to a gold standard like I would hold an artist today? He gets some leeway. There's a grading curve here. Does he appeal to me? No. Not a fan. He's
So if you came across some original art of his for, let's say, no?
maybe if it was like a love romances pages or a page or something like that. His Avengers art was it was brutal. When he gets on the Flash, in the late 70s for DC, it was not my jam, fortunately.
But I feel art from the 70s kind of suffered from that. This is a day job kind of attitude where people were cranking out
Yeah.
panels because, yeah.
Even
So
even the god King Kirby was guilty of that.
yeah, it's a different market then. I don't really have a strong opinion about him. I did not read his stuff in the 70s. I like his work in the early work, but I don't have a leg in this race.
I think what got me was the bait and switch, and it wasn't just Don Heck. It was all over the Bronze Age. You would see this awesome Gil Kane cover on Champions, and you'd open it up and Don Heck.
Yeah. But that's just comics in general. I mean, even in the 40s, you'd have this wonderful Matt Baker cover, and you open it up the book, and so yeah, that's just comics in general.
The Captain America Alex Schomburg cover, and you open up Al Davis, and womp, womp.
That still happens today. How many books now are sold strictly for the cover, and people don't really care about the interior art or the story at all.
That's true. I will say Don Heck, one of the founding fathers, right there with Kirby, Ditko, Lee, and Lieber. He's right there. So there you go, Julius. We can agree to disagree. Richard, your next piece of viewer mail.
My next piece is from YouTuber Timothy Markin 4481. Back in 1992, I bought a Love and Rockets t-shirt with the cover art to issue 24. That's what I'm wearing right now. I have a t-shirt here. This is the one that I got at SDCC, and you can see it's got Love and Rockets in red across the top, but the artwork on my t-shirt is white. Why they just couldn't just take the red all the way through and match the actual cover, I don't understand. So it was a white shirt with the art in red, which would be wonderful. So 30 years ago, that kind of shirt you described did exist, and I still own it, though it's way too small now. Oh, I know that. I did require a decent copy of Love and Rockets 24 last year for $60 on eBay, finally finishing up the run, including first printings going back to number 2.
Oh, so close.
Yeah. Took many years because I was actually collecting the series new when the last issue, number 50, was published 3 decades ago. Awesome. I'm glad you finished the run. I also was buying the books, this particular title. I don't remember if I got to the actual end, but I got pretty close. And I had to, this is one of those titles that I read cover to cover, um, even Gilbert stuff. Um, but I had no place to put it. It wouldn't fit in my comic book boxes. I couldn't bag and board it. So I would stick it in a pile, and they just my original copies did not survive very well over the decades, and that's just unfortunately because of the format. I hope your books are in better condition than mine. I really do need to flush out my collection and get those last books so that I can have a full run of the original storyline. Do you have the full run?
I was just going to show you something through the magic of editing.
Oh,
See, I did it again. Isn't that cool? When I moved, had to really lean down and clean out the house. And I purged all my magazines. And by that, I mean, I threw them in the dumpster. I
oh,
kept certain things, but I look back at what I threw away and I'm so angry at myself, like an almost full run of Jack Kirby Collector magazine, comic book artist. I thought, oh, no one's ever going to want comic book marketplace. It's not going to be a collectible. Now they are. That's how things become collectibles, John. You should know this after years on Earth. These are my Love and Rockets. This is one of two. IKEA sold these cardboard magazine holders. So I
uh-huh.
have two of these, and you'll see they're in here and they're all bent up. They're all a mess because I read them. I've got them all
Yeah,
in here, and I mean, I think this is 20 through 50 right here. Yeah, here's issue 50. Here's the end. Um, and they're just in this horrible cardboard thing that does not it's not conducive to keeping them minty fresh. That's why 24 is so hard to find in decent condition.
yeah. It's amazing. They, like I said, they are different form factors, so they don't they don't fit with the rest of your comics. You go to the comic book store, you get your pull from your pull list, and there'd be back when those came out, you'd have 25 books, and because
Yeah.
they're 50 cents, maybe a dollar. Um, and then you'd have the magazines. You'd have that, and I'm trying to think what other magazines that I would get back from there.
Starlog,
Starlog. Oh God, yes, I used to
Comic
love Starlog.
Scene, Comics Journal. I do that.
Yeah, so you'd have comic books, and then you'd have these oversized things, and I guess I just mentally didn't equate them as comics because they're in black and
Yeah.
white, they're a bigger format, and I never really, unfortunately, took care of them the same way that I took care of my comics.
Nobody did. I mean, I had a couple magazine boxes that I bought, but they filled up very quickly. And when I moved, like I said, this was not long ago. This is like 2010 when I threw all this stuff out. Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. So I look now.
should have known better.
Yeah. I remember I threw away all those comic fortresses too that I had.
Oh, that's
Yeah, I was it was a messy breakup, you guys. I had to get out of that house. My last piece of viewer mail comes to us from our Gmail at bronzeandmoderngods@gmail.com from Kenny Collector, who wrote us last week before our foreign variants episode went live. He was so excited. He wrote, "Hey guys, I see that you'll be talking about foreign variants today. This is one of my favorite topics as I love to collect foreign editions. I have dozens from such places as Turkey, Greece, Italy, Mexico, Germany, and more. The titles include Spawn, X-Men, Amazing Spider-Man, and many more. I received my copies of Miles Morales #1 UK edition the other day, and they look awesome. I have a Batman
awesome.
Beyond #1 German edition en route. Richard, thank
Excellent.
you. The most important foreign that I have so far is Captain America 21, the Greek edition. The cover is a color modification of X-Men 14, the first Sentinels. The interior stories include Captain America 178, X-Men 22, and two backup stories from Amazing Fantasy 15, The Bell Ringer, and There Are Martians Among Us.
What an eclectic group of stories to
Wow.
put in the book.
Thanks, Kenny. I think they missed the most important story in Amazing Fantasy 15, but okay.
Yeah, well,
Uh,
yeah.
I appreciate your mail. I didn't have a chance to show these last week. These came back from CGC. I dropped them off at San Diego, and they are more Mexican X-Men variants. How about that first Alpha Flight?
Oh,
In
beautiful. Wow, 902. Yeah.
0.0, off-white pages, looking good. And if part 1 isn't enough for you, how about part 2? X-Men 121 Mexican edition, 8.5. Off
Was Vindicator on the cover,
There he is, getting it right in the gut from Cyclops. Ooh, right in the solar plexus with the optic. It's funny. You have Alpha Flight there in Canada. Who's missing from this cover? There's no Wolverine.
There is not.
No. And is he on the cover of? Yeah, he's on the cover of 120. Which, by the way, did you know this is George Perez cover?
It is?
Yeah,
I did not.
I just realized that when it came back. Sorry, this is a Bob Budiansky cover, rather. There is a George Perez X-Men cover that I can't remember which one it is that I was like, oh, George Perez drew that? Yeah, it's interesting. Bob Budiansky and Terry Austin drew this cover. So, Shooter and Byrne were just mortal enemies, it seems like. He can't draw the covers yet. He's not ready. Byrne's like, let me draw the covers.
Man, I wish I had known that. I would have asked Jim about that when we had our interview.
Oh, he wasn't ready. I'm sure you would have gotten that. It's a long time ago. He was a young man. It was what, 1978? It was, he was, we're all old farts now. Hey, segue, old fart rule. The old fart rule today, I picked it for once. We go back to 1983, 40 years ago, to the books that shaped our collections or that we overlooked and missed and we want to talk about and shine a light on them today. That is the case today with, believe it or not, GI Combat number 250. Richard, were you like me, zero interest in war books?
Yeah, well, I had interest, but it waned by this point. I wasn't buying new war books, let's say.
I don't think anybody in our shop that I ran at the time I wasn't running the shop in 83, so this was a little early. GI Combat 250 was the anniversary issue of this long-running war title, which was still going strong in 1983. It began way back in 1952 from Quality Comics, and when they went under, DC acquired their catalog and kept publishing books like this, and I believe Young Romance was a quality title. Black Hawk was quality. Plastic Man, they didn't continue publishing Plastic Man, but they bought the rights. Doll Man, let's not forget Doll Man.
How can we forget Doll Man?
At this point, GI Combat had gone from being one of the last standing dollar comics, DC's experiment with a giant 68-page dollar format, to being basically just a 52-page double-sized comic that still had a dollar price point. GI Combat, man, they had a formula that seemed to work. They were going to work that formula into the ground. You had a Joe Kubert cover. You had a story with the haunted tank, maybe one or two, and then just little 2 to 5 page war tales in between. And boy, year after year after year, grinding them out.
It worked. And they knew their audience, and their audience. They trained their audience over the decades. I have to say, it's you knew what you were getting when you bought a GI Combat book.
It worked for decades. GI Combat ran until issue 288 in 1987. That's a pretty astonishing run for a war title. I mean, I think Sergeant Fury at Marvel gave up the ghost in 1980. So for that to run another 7 years, near the end, they tried to tweak it a bit. They saw the success that Marvel was having with G.I. Joe, which, not really a war title, but they introduced a new feature called the Mercenaries. They were, multicultural, multinational group of mercenaries that just kind of reminded you a little bit, maybe, of G.I. Joe, just a slight little bit. For GI Combat 250, CGC 9.8 sold for a whopping $50 hairs in February of 2021. The comic boom of 2021, $50. I actually started collecting dollar comics. I had a weird goal about 7, 8 years ago. I'm going to buy all the DC dollar comics. And boy, are they tough in grade. GI Combat in particular. These are tough books to get above a 9.0 because they're like Love and Rockets. People read them, you know?
Yeah, good books. My first experience with them was at the barber shop. My barber had a stack of comics that occupied the kids where their parents got their hair cut or they got their hair cut. And I was reading these things. Some have covers, some didn't. And so you're right, condition is difficult because people read these books.
This is a book that just died in the direct market. Nobody bought it. It was very low seller. So this was kept alive just mostly by newsstand sales. So this was very much a civilian book. The civilians would read it, as I refer to the non-hardcore comic fans. They would just do drive-by readings of GI Combat.
Mhm. Oh yeah, and I have to mention, I was reading them in the barbershop when I was 8 or 10 years old. So war stories, we let our kids read them back then because that's the way we rolled back in the 80s and the 70s.
Not only war stories, but war stories with a ghost of a Confederate general running a tank.
Yeah, yep, yep.
Oh, the haunted tank.
GI Combat 87 is still one of the books I want. The first haunted tank.
Oh man, good luck with that. Maybe in Baltimore, you can someone can hook you up.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep a lookout.
All right, time for our underrated books of the week. Richard, you picked this just for me, didn't you?
I realize we have never talked about this book,
Mm.
other than in mentioning it in passing. It's Zot #1 from Eclipse back in 1984. So this book is the first appearance of Zot, written and drawn by Scott McCloud. Ran for 36 issues total. The first 10 were in color. The rest of them were in black and white because they found out that the book wasn't making money in color, but they were able to make a profit printing it in black and white. This book always it's such a happy it's just that it was made to be kind of the counterculture to the dark and broody stories that were going on in DC and Marvel. So it's a happy, upbeat kind of storyline. It's more along the lines of Shazam and the Marvel family than it is Batman or the X-Men. And I always pictured this book more of like a comic book strip. It reads. It doesn't have very deep stories, at least in my opinion. And so the book can be divided into different panels, and I think would have made a great comic book strip for a newspaper. But it's an interesting storyline. If you're interested in reading it, there in 2000, Scott McCloud actually made a webcomic for this, and it's available. We'll post the URL to the webcomic. You can get a kind of feel for the characters from the story. Census, there are only 40 books on the census. 15 of them are 9.8s. GPA is, as of July of this year, the last sale for 9.8 was $134. So not overly expensive. But I think people who bought books back in this era, have some nostalgia for this story and the storyline. And I really think it's undervalued at 134 for the 9.8.
I love this book. I understand why it hasn't been reprinted very much. Eclipse lost a lot of the negatives in a flood, giant flood that destroyed a lot of inventory. But I wish it would come back. I wish it would come as a digital comic or, be accessible in some way outside of gray market downloads, because it was really well done. It was surprisingly adult near the end. Zot had like two eras. It had that lighthearted superhero science fiction-y part, the first 15 or 20 or so issues. And then Zot gets trapped on Earth, and it really stops being about Zot and being more about his friend Jenny and her troubles in high school and her friends having issues. It was almost like an after school special in a lot of respects, very much like Love and Rockets, like a teenage Love and Rockets. And I think maybe Scott McCloud was looking over here and said, "Oh, that's actually the book I want to do. This was fun." Jenny's brother Butch turning into a monkey and things like that. That kind of went away all of a sudden. It never happened again. And And then, it ran 36 issues and then it just kind of ended. I think he wanted to go off and do other things. I think it was a holding on sales wise, but he ended up writing Understanding Comics, which is a groundbreaking book
Mm,
that's taught in schools. And, he's probably made so much money off that, Zod is a fun little training ground for that.
mhm. Yeah, we have never talked about that book too. That's something else I think at some point we need to correct.
About 5 or 6 years ago, going back to Zot, sorry, I got a full run of 36 issues of Zot in high grade on eBay, I think for $30. Yes. So
Wow.
they're out there.
Wow.
It's dollar bin stuff a lot. Another book that's tough in the grade because people read it. People weren't going, Zot's going to be worth $100 someday. They were just like, I like this book. A lot of the Eclipse stuff is like that. Excellent pick, Richard. Very forgotten book. Sadly,
Mm,
I wish people knew more about it. I wish more people knew about Zod. Um, my underrated book of the week is one for you. It is Barbie Fashion number 13. It is a swimsuit cover featuring none other than Barbie swimming with a school of fish by Amanda Harley Quinn Connor, no less. If this cover looks a little familiar, Richard, that's because it is an homage to Showcase number 79 featuring Dolphin, drawn by the legendary J. Scott Pike. Look at those two covers. You
yeah.
didn't know about this one, did you?
I did not. You pinged me when you were talking about featuring this book, and I didn't. I wasn't really aware there were any homages to that cover for Showcase 79. So this is pretty cool.
Like to give Amanda the benefit of the doubt and say it was intentional. ... Question mark. Not a swipe. A CGC 9.8 of Barbie Fashion 13 sold for $100 in January of 2022 in the great comic boom of 2022. Raws on eBay for this book are kind of all over the place, anywhere from $5 to $30. But apparently, someone came across a little stash of them, a box or something, because there are 3 different lots of 12 to 15 copies each that sold for 120 to 150 bucks late June and July this year. Look at those 3 finished eBay auctions. So maybe not as scarce as we think it is. Although this might be a book you can find at your LCS or in dollar bins. But with the Barbie movie doing so well now, a lot of dealers are rethinking their Barbie stock and digging in. Remember at Neo Comic Con, all the people that had Barbie on their
Yeah,
wall?
yeah.
I
Definitely because of the success of the movie, right?
guarantee you, all those dealers, they had those Barbies on their back wall. Those Barbies were sitting in the $3 bin 2 months prior.
Oh, don't get me started. I remember NeoCon. Somebody had this is number of years ago. Star Wars number one, high grade Star Wars number one, $10, and I passed it by. Um, yeah, books come and go in terms of popularity.
We learned don't pass by Star Wars books when they're $10. Don't throw away your magazines and don't throw away your fortresses. Just these are the
Right.
lessons for
Yes.
today, I suppose. Well, that is going to do it for another week. Thanks everyone for checking us out. We will see you in Baltimore in a couple of weeks and we will catch you next time. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks, John. Everybody, stay safe.